Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. I recently posted a poll in the community section on YouTube asking whether I should do a traditional 6x6 video using the Honeybee Stamps Halloween Harvest Collection or do a full voiceover. There were almost 600 votes and the majority voted for a full voiceover. So here we go with that video, and I will use up the entire paper collection other than a few small pattern paper scraps. Most of the stamps and dies I use in this video are from Honeybee Stamps' brand new Autumn Splendor release. I'll also use a few stamp and die sets from last year's fall release, and I will have links provided in the description box if you are interested in any of the items I use in this video. For card design number 1, I'm using a card sketch from the Paper Players. This is number 242. And if you are interested in any of the sketches I share in this video, I do have all of that information on my coordinating blog post. That link is provided in the description box below, or you can simply head over to KristieMarcotte.com. I do provide the measurements on the card sketches, and these are for American Standard A2 size cards. And all of my cards in this video are A2 size. For the cardstock layers, I add an additional 1/8 of an inch to the measurements listed on the sketch. But you can change that up if you'd rather have a wider matted layer. For my very first card, you can see I did not follow that sketch very well, and that's because I accidentally corner rounded that bottom piece, the narrow piece, instead of the top piece. So I'm just gonna flip-flop the two and still make this sketch work. So you can see how those sketches really are more for inspiration. You don't have to follow them exactly. So I have two different pattern papers, this beautiful Halloween colored plaid on the top, and then on the bottom, it's very tone on tone with little leaves in the background. Added 3 different banners using solid cardstock. On the stitch oval die cut, I put 3 little pumpkins, and this is from a set from last year. I think it's called Itty Bitty Pumpkins. They're so cute. There's the 2 different pieces. So you can have the brown, or you could do green in the background and add your pumpkin color on the top of it. For the sentiment, this is Hey There Pumpkin, and this is included in the Patchwork Pumpkin stamp set. And I use the coordinating die to cut that out. And I'll just pop that up using some thin foam squares and adhere it in the lower right-hand corner. I'll adhere the 3 pumpkins using some liquid adhesive, putting the largest down first, that tall, skinny pumpkin to the left of the large pumpkin, and then 1 more on top. And the die set does include 1 other pumpkin. It's a teeny tiny one. To finish off the card, I'll add a few pieces of bling, and this is from the coordinating gem sticker set. And I also decided to add a little banner in the upper right-hand corner. With the oval and sentiment on the lower portion of the card, I felt that upper right-hand corner seemed empty, so adding just a small banner balanced it out. I made a total of 4 cards using this sketch, although I did change it up just a bit. For the Halloween cards, I decided to turn the sketch horizontal so that boo word would fit a little better. And then for the other pumpkin card, I cut those pieces correctly, but I think both versions of the sketch still turned out really nice. Now moving on to card design number 2. I will be using my favorite die set from the whole Autumn Splendor release. This is Lovely Layers Sunflowers. These are gorgeous and so easy to assemble. For the petals of the flower, there's 3 different die pieces. So I cut those out using the same color. Have a little more mustard yellow for one of the flowers and a lighter yellow for the second flower. I'm inking up just the ends of the petal using the Sana Catherine Pooler ink color. I just have my blender brush, and I have my ink in this awesome ink stand, and it's designed specifically for Catherine Pooler inks. This is so nice. It has some grippy pieces on the bottom so it doesn't move when you're inking up your brush. So I did all 6 of those flower pieces. Now it's time to assemble the flowers. So you have your 3 die cut pieces. Find an area that's easy to line up. For me, I found a group of 3 petals together, and then off to the left of those petals, there's a large V between the petals. And I found it easier to line those up first. And then I add the second piece and then the third piece. So when you have your flower finished, all of those petals will have a little stitch detail. So you know if you see just stitch detail, you assembled it correctly. So I'll do the same thing for the second flower. And if you want to add some more dimension to the flowers, you can curl up those petals. You could even put some foam dimension underneath each of the petals. I just decided to pull it up with my fingers. So next you'll add the center to the flower. There's two different die cut pieces. I decided just to use brown, really going for that traditional sunflower look. So I'll just adhere those two pieces together. And they have really fun stitch detail on them. It's probably hard to see in the video, but this is an amazing die set. I highly recommend it. So there are my two flowers. This set also includes one leaf that has all of that detail on it. I just cut out 3 of them. I'm using this pretty leaf pattern paper for the background. Really don't need anything else since I have these beautiful sunflowers. So first I'll attach the leaves, and I did add just one small foam square on the very end of the leaf to pop it up, and then put liquid adhesive on the bottom portion of the leaf. For the darker flower, I'll adhere it using some liquid adhesive. Just going to put that in the lower left-hand corner. And then for the light yellow flower, I'll pop it up using some of the thin foam squares. I'll adhere my third leaf down first so I can get the placement correct. And I'll just add good coverage on the back with the foam dimension. I'll remove the release paper and adhere the light yellow flower in the upper right-hand corner. And I don't think this die set is really direction specific, so you could put your flower any direction. For this sentiment, I'll be adding the word thanks, and this is one of the new stamp and die sets by Honeybee Stamps. I love their Buzzword stamp and die sets. I'm only using 2 of the dies. There's one more included in the set, and it would give a pierced detail all along the outside. But that made the word just a little too large, so I'm only using the 2. I'm using some dark green cardstock for the word thanks, and the outline I have some green pearlescent cardstock, and that color matches almost perfectly with the background pattern paper. I will pop it up using some thin foam squares. I won't put any of them underneath the T or part of the H since it'll be sitting on top of one of the sunflowers. So just adhere that in place, tucking that H underneath one of the petals on that light yellow flower. To finish up the card, I'll add a few of the gem stickers. I love how this card turned out. I made 2 with the same color, and then I decided to make 2 in purple. So I have some pretty plaid paper for the background. And on the thanks, I couldn't decide if I liked the dark paper behind the word thanks or the light paper, so I did both. I love sunflowers, so I know I'll get a lot of use out of this die set. Now moving on to card design number 3. I'll be using OWH sketch number 26 for inspiration. I have this fun jack-o'-lantern paper for the background, and I'll add a strip of the orange and black and white polka dot paper across the middle. First, I'll layer the jack-o'-lantern paper on some orange rust-colored cardstock, and then again on some dark brown cardstock, and that'll really give it a nice pop and contrast. Put my card front onto a card base, and for this card I am leaving that 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. Instead of adding that dark brown cardstock layer to the polka dot paper, I'll be using some Love from Lizzie peel-offs. These are the brown mirror color in the pinstripe style. I'm using the narrowest width and just putting it along the edge of that polka dot paper. Since the middle of the card will be covered up with an image, I'm able to use some of those small peel-off scrap pieces. So I'll just adhere this in place. Now instead of the rectangle that's indicated on the sketch, I'll be substituting it for an oval. So I cut out a stitched oval die cut, use some white shimmer cardstock for that. And for the image, I'll be using Honeybee Stamps Patchwork Pumpkin stamp and die set. This set is so much fun. I use one of the dies and the plaid paper and cut out this base piece of the pumpkin. Now I'll stamp this oval piece, and this will go on the very front of the pumpkin for some extra detail. And I stamped this using the orange peel Catherine Pooler ink color. So I have the coordinating die, cut out this oval piece, put some liquid adhesive on the back and adhere it on top of that plaid pumpkin piece. Now there's several different stamp designs, so you can create all these different fun pumpkin looks. And I've already stamped out some of the vines, the leaf, and the stem. I'll adhere this stem to the back of the pumpkin, put a little bit of liquid adhesive and also a strip of double-sided tape, just to make sure it's not going to come apart. And then I'll pop up the pumpkin using some of the thin foam squares. Sometimes I use white, sometimes I use black, depends on what I grab. I'll adhere that pumpkin to the center of the oval. Now I can add the vines and the leaf. I stamped the vines using the eucalyptus color ink from Catherine Pooler and then cut those out with the coordinating dies. For the leaf, I use Honeybee Stamps Intense Black ink, and then I did color it very simply using a Copic marker. Once I have all of those adhered, I can add the sentiment. And I stamped out Thankful for You. This is from the Hello Fall stamp set from last year. I put some of the foam squares just on the right side where it goes off of the pumpkin, and then added some liquid adhesive on the left side. Then to finish up the card, I'll add just a few of the gem stickers around the pumpkin and sentiment. And there is my finished card. I did make two using this sketch. Now I'll be using this same sketch for two more cards, but I wanted to show the process of assembling this card as well. So there's the same sketch, OWH number 26. I have some beautiful fall leaf paper for the background. I'll add some of the Love from Lizzie peel-offs to the edge of this strip. Just tuck those ends around the back. Just add a couple more on the other side. Now several of the pattern papers in the Honeybee collection are white and black, so you could keep them as is or you could add some color. I think it's fun that the back side of this paper has spider webs, and that's how most of this collection is. It's Halloween on one side or fall on the other. So if you're not big into Halloween cards, you can just flip over the paper and use that fall theme instead. I decided to add some color to this pattern paper. I'm using Icing on the Cake color by Catherine Pooler. Nothing fancy, just adding a light coating of the ink, putting a little extra along the outside edge. You won't see the middle, so I didn't have to put a lot of ink in the center. And here you can see what it would look like if I just had the black and white paper versus that little bit of brown color. So I'll layer it on some of the orange rust colored cardstock and then again on some dark brown cardstock. I know it looks black in the video, but it is a very dark brown. Put my card front onto a card base, and I know that white edge along the outside really pops, but it works out well to go with the white oval I'll be adding to the center of the card. First, I'll adhere this pattern paper strip across the middle. There is that white oval. I'll adhere that in place using some liquid adhesive. I'll be adding another pumpkin, but this time I'm just using solid cardstock. I decided to use that same rust orange colored cardstock, so I cut out two pieces. Then I'm using the Icing on the Cake color and adding some ink just along the edge for some extra dimension and detail. So once the larger pumpkin piece is finished, I can add it to this smaller oval. Then I'll adhere the two pieces together, and on this pumpkin I decided to pop up that small oval using some of the thin foam squares. Just remove the release paper and adhere those together. And I love the look of that ink around the edges. And I'll pop up the whole pumpkin using some more of the thin foam squares. This is my favorite foam dimension since it's not really thick. So I've already stamped out the vines and one of the leaves, and I did color that again using a Copic marker. For this stem, I used one of the dies that just cuts out the solid piece of the stem instead of the ink. I like that there's options for both. Remove the release paper and adhere that pumpkin to the center of the oval. I am following the same card design as the plaid pumpkin that I made, but I wanted to show the difference using the solid cardstock and also adding the ink to that background pattern paper. I'll adhere the vines down using some liquid adhesive and then the leaf on top of those vines. There are a few images on the Patchwork Pumpkin stamp set that you could color, but you can see I only colored the leaf. So if you're not really into coloring, this set still works out just fine. I'll pop up the Thankful for You sentiment, just adding some foam dimension on the right side, putting a little bit of liquid adhesive on that left portion where it goes on top of the pumpkin. Then to finish off the card, I'll bring in some more of the gem stickers, adding 3 of them around the pumpkin and the sentiment. So there is my finished card, and again, I did make 2 using this sketch. I really like how this one turned out. The plaid pumpkin is fun as well, but I love just this solid cardstock pumpkin. Now moving on to card design number 4. The sketch is from OWH. This is number 155. I have some beautiful fall leaf paper for the background, layering it on some of this orange rust colored cardstock and then again on some burgundy cardstock. And I did cut out a couple of die cuts from that background cardstock layer, just to save on paper. I'll be adding a small stitched oval die cut, and I did cut this out smaller than what's indicated on the sketch. And I did that for 2 reasons. One, I didn't want to cover up a lot of that background paper. And the second reason is because I only had about a 2 1/4 inch strip of that pattern paper, so I couldn't cut a larger oval. Next, I'll be stamping one of the leaves, and this is from the Hello Fall Stamp and Coordinating die set. First, I cut out that die cut image, adhered it into my mini MISTI. First, I stamped the color portion of the leaf. I used a Hero Arts Ombre ink pad. This is light to dark peach. It's so pretty and it matches the pattern paper beautifully. Now I can stamp the second portion of the leaf that has the stem and the veins. And I used the Icing on the Cake ink color by Catherine Pooler for that. So there is that leaf all finished. So easy to do. I love this stamp set. I will be popping up just part of the leaf using some of the thin foam squares. First, I'll work on the sentiment. I'm adding the word season. And the word season is included in the Bitty Buzzwords season set. So there's the stamp and also the coordinating dies. I used some gold pearlescent cardstock for the word season. And here's where you see that outline piece that I cut out of the background paper. Now I was ready to adhere my leaf down. You can see I put some liquid adhesive on the back. Then I remembered I wanted to add some gold splatter to that leaf. So I wiped off the liquid adhesive, put some more of the release paper on the back of that foam so it's not sticking to my paper towel. Using some metallic gold ink from scrapbook.com, I just pressed it onto an acrylic block, add a little bit of water, use my paintbrush and just splattered it onto this leaf. Now it has this lovely gold splatter detail on that leaf. Attach the leaf down first, then I'll glue the word season in place. And then using that coordinating stamp set, I stamped out my favorite. And I'll just adhere that above the word season. Before adhering it in place, I will add a scrap piece of cardstock on the left side of that sentiment where it goes off of the oval. That'll keep it nice and level. Then for a few finishing touches, I'm adding a small stitched banner in the upper left-hand corner. And also a few of the gem stickers, just placing them around the sentiment and the image. So there is my finished card, and I did make a total of 4 using this sketch. 2 with that beautiful fall leaf paper and 2 with this beautiful floral paper. For the floral cards, I used the bold Botanical stamp and coordinating die set. And I'll be using that again on another card in this video. It's also from the new Autumn Splendor release. For card design number 5, needed to make some more sunflowers. This time the flower will be a pink and orange color. So the background petal and the top petal are this pink, it's kind of a pink peach color, and then the center is an orange. I thought it would be fun to mix the 2 colors together for the flower. For the center of the flower, I have a darker pink cardstock. And then the little rim piece that goes on top, I used some glitter cardstock. So it's super sparkly. Also decided to add a little bit of glitter to the very center of the flower. So I'm using a clear glitter brush from scrapbook.com. For the background of the card, I've already stamped out the sentiment. I have this beautiful pattern paper with those same peach, orange, and green colors. The sentiment is, "Thanks, I'm so grateful for the gift of your friendship." I'm layering that pattern paper on a scallop rectangle die cut, and this is from Honeybee Stamps. It has that nice stitch detail all along the outside. I used some ATG tape on the back and also some liquid adhesive along the scallop edge just to make sure it lays nice and flat on my card. I'll only be adding one flower this time, but I'll still put 3 of the leaves. And I used a green cardstock that matches that green in the pattern paper. I love this bright, vibrant color. So I did put some of the foam squares on the tip of the leaf and then liquid adhesive at the bottom. Curling up some of those petals to add some dimension, and then I'll glue the flower down using some liquid adhesive. Then to finish off the card, I'll add a few of the gem stickers. Overall, this is a very simple design, but with that beautiful sunflower and all the detail, it really doesn't need anything more. And I did make 2 cards using that same design. Now moving on to card design number 6. I have this fun green polka dot paper for the background, adding a couple of Love from Lizzie peel-offs in black. This is the pinstripe style. For the first peel-off, I did use a full strip. I want to make sure to get it nice and straight. But for that second piece, I could use some of the small scraps, since you're not going to see most of the center. It'll be covered up with an image. Put some ATG tape on the back and layer this piece on a scallop or rectangle die cut, this time using some black cardstock. Put some ATG tape on the back and also that little bit of liquid adhesive along the outside edge. Then I'll adhere my card front onto a card base, and you do see a little bit of that white card base along the outside edge. Now I'll set that aside and start working on the image, bringing out that Patchwork Pumpkin stamp set. This is so much fun. So for this card, I decided to use the largest size pumpkin. I've already cut out the die cut piece using some green cardstock that matches that pattern paper. It's a little bit darker. I selected the polka dot strip for the outside portion of the pumpkin, and I'll ink it up using some intense black ink. And I decided to have those polka dots on both of the outside edges. What made it so simple is you could just flip over the die cut and it still lines up perfectly. Now just to save on time, I've already stamped the second and third portion of the pumpkin. I just use different stamps that are included on that set. So I have some of the gingham and then some stripes for that front portion. Just glued all of those together. It creates this fun little pumpkin. So you could mix and match and change up your pumpkin. You could do it on white cardstock and add different colors. I decided to go with the black and green. I'll pop up that whole pumpkin using some of the thin foam squares. I stamped out the stem using the Twilight color Catherine Pooler ink and then cut it out using one of the coordinating dies. I have 2 of the vines and the larger leaf this time. And I did color up that leaf using a Copic marker. Just glue all of those onto the top of the pumpkin. And I'll start working on the sentiment. So this time I'll be using the Hey There Pumpkin sentiment, and that's included on that same stamp set. I'll be stamping it on some black cardstock and doing some white heat embossing. First, I used some anti-static powder and just wiped it on that black cardstock. Stamped the sentiment using some Versamark ink. And this is some white embossing powder from Wow. So I'll get out my heat gun and heat set that sentiment. And by using that anti-static powder, I'm not getting all of those extra little bits of the white embossing powder. So I'll use the coordinating die to cut that out. I love the contrast with the white embossing powder and the black cardstock. And I did pop that up using some thin foam squares. Then to finish off the card, I'll add a few of the gem stickers. I love these. They coordinate with the paper collection, so I always pick up one whenever I use a Honeybee Stamps collection. There is my finished card, and again, I did make 2. Now moving on to card design number 7, I'm using a card sketch from MFT. This is number 457. I have some purple polka dot paper for the top portion of the card and some of this black and purple grid pattern for the bottom portion. For that scallop border that's indicated on the sketch, I do have some scallop border dies, but I decided to use a Honeybee Stamps scalloped rectangle die. Cut out that full rectangle and then just trimmed off one of the edges. So this is an option if you don't have any scallop border dies. I adhered it using some double-sided tape and then just flipped over the panel to trim off the extra. Put my card front onto a card base. Then I cut out a circle frame and I used a waffle flower die set for this. You could use just some circle dies, a couple different sizes to cut out these little frames. I'll be adding the sentiment boo, and I'm using all 3 of the dies that are included. For the word boo, I cut this out from some white shimmer cardstock, layered it on some black cardstock, and then again on this dark purple cardstock. That back layer has a fun pierced detail all along the edge. I'll add some of the thin foam squares to the back of the sentiment, remove the release paper, and adhere the sentiment to the center of that circle frame. For a little extra detail, I decided to bring out those little pumpkins, the itty bitty pumpkin die set. This time I used some black cardstock for the stem and some pearlescent purple cardstock for the front portion of the pumpkin. I love the etched detail that the die cuts out on the front portion of the pumpkin. I'll adhere all 3 of the pumpkins in the lower right hand corner on top of that scallop border. The largest pumpkin I adhered using some liquid adhesive. That tall skinny pumpkin, I did put some foam tape on more the right side of it and adhered it on top of that large pumpkin, and then just used some liquid adhesive for the smaller pumpkin. Then I finished out the card with some more of the gem stickers. I made a total of 3 cards, 2 in purple and 1 using some leftover orange polka dot paper and some of that gingham paper in the Halloween colors. So at this point, I don't have any full sheets of pattern paper left. I have lots of these thin strips. So I decided to use OWH sketch number 192. This is a great sketch if all you have left are some narrow strips. And at this point, I have lots of 2-inch pattern paper strips. I did have one more large rectangle in this houndstooth pattern. So I'm using some of the green polka dot paper and the green, black, and white stripe paper, layering everything on some black cardstock. I used some of the white shimmer cardstock for the background. Now there is that gap between the polka dot and the stripe paper, so I will add some scrap cardstock. And I know it's purple, but you're not going to see it. Then I'll add this 1-inch black cardstock strip across the middle. Put some adhesive on the back and layer this panel on some black cardstock. And the cardstock layer for this card is an additional 1/4 of an inch. Whenever I have a white background, I do like to have a wider cardstock layer. Before adhering the large houndstooth rectangle, I will add some scrap cardstock above and below where it goes over that black strip of cardstock, just to keep everything nice and level. Put some liquid adhesive on the back and adhere it to the card. For the main card design, I am following this sketch closely. I've already stamped and cut out the images using the Hello Fall stamp set. I used 2 different cardstocks to stamp the leaves. I have the lighter cardstock in the center. I'll glue the outside leaves down first and then I'll pop up the center leaf. Sometimes when I use this sketch, I like to have a pretty pattern paper for that larger rectangle, but for this card, I'm having the images be the focal point instead of the pattern paper. I'm adding this sentiment thanks, and I did pop that up using some thin foam squares. Then to finish off the card, I'll add some more of the gem stickers. And there is my finished card. This time I made a total of 6 cards and most of them are different. So I have an assortment of pattern papers, use some different images and sentiments. I love that floral one, that's my favorite. And then I did make 2 of the Halloween Boo cards using the skull and the spiderweb paper. This card sketch was perfect for using up several of those 2-inch strips of pattern paper. So I have some fun fall leaves. Here's one with some wheat stems and the word thanks. There's my favorite floral design, and I used a Hydrangea ombre ink by Hero Arts for the floral portion. So at this point, here are all the leftover pattern paper scraps. Not a ton left over, but I can still make a few more cards. For card design number 9, I'm using 2 of those 2-inch pattern paper strips, and these were left over from those sunflower cards early on in the video. So I didn't want those to get wasted. They're beautiful. I love that design. So I adhered both of them onto some orange cardstock, and then I used a Basketweave die from Honeybee Stamps, adding this strip of cardstock across the center, and that die just gives it a little extra detail. Just trim off the extra, put my card front onto a card base. So now you'd never know I have 2 2-inch strips instead of a full panel in the background. I'm adding a scalloped square die cut, and I use some white shimmer cardstock for that. Before adhering it to the card, I will put some of this scrap cardstock layers where it goes above and below that basket weave strip. And just adhere it to the left side of the card. I've already gone ahead and stamped and cut out the images using the Bold Botanical stamp and coordinating die set. I'll adhere the stems down first, and then I have my flowers, and I stamp those using one of the ombre inks. It's so pretty. One thing that's nice about this stamp set, there's a guide included so you know which stamps go together to create the flower. Now, if I had actually looked at that guide, I would have realized I glued my flowers on upside down. But that's okay, I think they still look pretty. I'm adding this sentiment, oh hello, and I've already cut these out and glued them together. I'll pop up the word hello, and then on the O, I'll just glue that down directly with some liquid adhesive. First, I'll adhere the word hello before attaching the word O. I'll just add that little bit of liquid adhesive and nestle that above the word hello. Then to finish off the card, I'll bring out the gem stickers, add a few around the sentiment and the flowers. The colors on this pattern paper are just beautiful. I could use a whole paper pad with those colors. And there is my finished card. I was only able to make one since I'm down to just some pattern paper scraps. Moving on to card design number 10. I selected 4 of the pattern papers and cut them out using a stitched rectangle die. I have some orange cardstock for the background. I'll add some rose gold peel-offs along the outside edge. Just wrap the ends around the back, and then I'll layer this panel on the dark burgundy cardstock. The 4 pattern papers that I'm combining on this card are some of my favorite in the whole collection. So I'll put some ATG tape on the back of this panel and add it to a card base. And I will have that 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. Next, I'll add those rectangle die cuts. They're very tall, so there's not a lot of room on the upper and lower portion. But I am trying to get them nice and straight and evenly placed. And I'll adhere them using some liquid adhesive. Gives me a little bit of wiggle room before they adhere in place. For the rectangle die cuts, I decided to have the similar colors diagonal from each other versus on the same row. I think it balances out the card nicely. Attach my final rectangle die cut. Then I'll adhere a stitched oval die cut to the center, and I cut that out from some white shimmer cardstock. Just adhere it in place using some liquid adhesive. For the image and sentiment, I'm using another leaf, and I had an extra already stamped out. It's the same one I used on a previous card. I'll pop up just the tips of the leaf with some foam squares and then adhere the rest in place with some liquid adhesive. I have the word autumn and I cut that out from some glitter cardstock. Just adhere that onto the bottom portion of the leaf. Then I'll finish off the card adding some more of the gem stickers. I know I've been adding these gem stickers to most of the cards, but I still have a ton left over from this sheet since they have 300 on each sheet. I did make a second card. I know it's not exactly the same style, but it's similar. And I know I didn't show it in the video, but that purple card is based on OWH sketch number 154. Now moving on to card design number 11, and this is my final card design. I have lots of these. I have several of these. It's about 1 inch by 3 3/4 inch strips. So I wanted to find a way to feature lots of them on one card. I'm using some white pearlescent cardstock for the background, layering it on some black cardstock, and then again on this deep purple burgundy cardstock. And I'm taking all of those strips and just staggering them on the background. So just shifting one off to the left, one toward the right, and continuing that pattern until I fill up that background. So I was able to get 7 different strips on this one card. I only selected the patterns that work well together, so I don't have any of that darker green or the bright purple. I'll adhere them in place using some liquid adhesive. That way I can just shift them slightly. Can't do that with the ATG tape. Just work my way down to the very end of the panel. And I'm not measuring placement, I'm really just eyeballing everything. Since most of the pieces are the same size, it's easy to get them evenly placed. So one final piece. I think that panel looks so pretty with all the different pattern papers. Then I'll add a stitched oval die cut to the center. Just glue that down using some liquid adhesive. Now I'll pull out the Bold Botanical stamp set. So there's that stamping guide that is included if you purchase the set. And I decided I would do one of the flowers with you, show you how to assemble it. It's so easy. So I'm doing the bee. So there's bee 1, 2, and 3. So I already pulled off all of those stamps. I'll start with the flower. Just put it on an acrylic block. I'm using the Tiara color from Catherine Pooler. Just stamp it on some white cardstock. And then for the stem, I'm using the eucalyptus color. Just ink that up and stamp it on my white cardstock. And then there is the final tiny piece that goes into the center of that flower on the left. And I'm using the Mandarin Spice color. This stamp set is so easy to line everything up, and this isn't really a fall collection. You could use this all year round. There's several different flowers included on the set. I used the coordinating dies to cut out all of those pieces. I'll adhere the stem and the leaves down first using some liquid adhesive. And I could pop up the flowers, but I decided to glue them down flat instead. And I made sure to look at the stamping guide this time so I didn't adhere my flowers on upside down. For the sentiment, I'm adding the word hello. And I did put my acrylic block on top of those stamped images to let the glue adhere. I'll pop up the sentiment hello using some of the thin squares. And this is so tiny. I believe this one is included on the Hello Fall set. Then to finish off the card, I'll add some more of the gem stickers. Just trying to figure out placement on that final piece. And there is my finished card. I love how this one turned out. I've never done this design before for my final card. Here are all the leftover pattern paper scraps, just 7 small pieces. I will add those to my scrap box of the year, and at the end of the year, I'm going to pull out that box and see if I can make a few more cards. In addition to the paper pad, I also used 20 sheets of 8.5 by 11 and 4 sheets of 12 by 12 solid colored cardstock. I made a total of 33 cards using Honeybee Stamps Halloween Harvest 6x6 paper pad. This collection is absolutely beautiful. I always enjoy using honeybee stamps paper collections. If you are interested in any of the products I use in this video, I do have links provided in the description box below. And if you want a closer look at the cards that I made, I do share card pictures on my coordinating blog post. I know a lot of people like to head over there for the sketches and also a better look at the cards. My favorite cards this time were using the Lovely Layer Sunflower dies, although I really like the Patchwork Pumpkin set as well. Let me know which card was your favorite. I still have a couple more autumn paper collections I want to use this year, so hopefully I'll have time to get to those. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.